What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So this is the first time this entire season that I can look at a game that we lost and say this was just a bad game for us. Because most of the time it's like, okay, so there's a personnel problem or there's a formation problem or, something along those lines. But this one, it was just a bad performance. And that's kind of scary considering, we're right at the end of the season. We've got 3 games left. And first of all, going into this game, we've got 4 games left and we're 4 points ahead of second place. And we're facing second place. This should be a game that we turn up. This should be a game where it's like, okay, we got to go. We got to take them. We got to take them on. We got to just push them. And instead, they turn up and we just went to sleep. And it was kind of embarrassing to watch, honestly. Because this is a moment where it should be like, okay, so clearly we're the first, we're the best in the league, let's show them why. Let's show them why they're second and we're first. Instead, they showed us why they're about to take over for first because we just went out there and played lackluster. I mean, it was awful. It really was awful to watch from our side. Now, with that being said, I do want to address something before I really get into reviewing us, because this is more not as an Atlanta United fan, but as a fan of the sport. I love the fact that MLS is getting bigger here. I love the fact that the fan base is growing. People are starting to love the sport a bit more. Whether it's the atmosphere or they're starting to see, hey, this is actually a fun sport to watch. Whatever the case, it's growing in popularity. However, with that being said, the intensity of the league is picking up. The quality of the league is picking up. Quality of the players is definitely getting a lot better. But the referees are still the same. And in my opinion, this is probably the most embarrassing that I've seen so far. Because obviously VAR is there to help out a bit. I get that. But it feels like VAR has also made referees a bit more complacent. Because there's been a lot of decisions that either have or haven't been made because they feel like, oh, VAR's there, it's going to catch it if I don't. But that first penalty has got to be the most embarrassing call I've ever seen in the sport. Because I could see from watching on TV, from the high position of the camera, I could see that Brad got the ball. And so when he pointed to penalty, and honestly, I wasn't even like watching the TV right here. I'm in a gym where they have the TV up high. I'm watching from a distance, and I see he clearly got the ball. And so when they show the replay, they show the guy was offside, and then they show he clearly got the ball, and they show the referee in a really good position. All I'm thinking is, how did you call that a penalty? Where in your mind did you see him put his hands on the ball and say, that's a penalty? Now, the second penalty I didn't see. I had gone on. I was planning to watch it later, and then I happened to see it at a sports bar, and I was like, oh, great. It's already 1-0. I heard it was an obvious handball. I saw the highlights. I couldn't really see very well. The third one, in my opinion, that's just poor refereeing again. Because anytime a player turns like this and his arm is here and it hits him here, and what was it, like maybe 3 yards? Ball to hand, the hand's not in an unnatural position. How is that a handball? And that's one VAR can't overturn because that's just a judgment call. He sees it, you're not overturning a handball with VAR. So I'm glad Brad made the save because justice. But that's the thing, though. You look at the first penalty, you look at that third penalty, both of those are just really bad referee decisions. And so it's nothing that VAR can fix. Obviously, VAR can change the decision, but you can't change the bad calls. You can't change the frustration that comes through the players whenever the keeper comes out, makes a good save, and you give a penalty for it. I mean, granted, our play wasn't good, but mentally the toll that takes to know that the referee is willing to give a penalty for nothing, it's kind of disheartening. And it just piles on to the fact that we were already playing very poor. It just piles that on. It piles on the frustration and the pressure whenever the referee is just really making poor decisions against you. So I mean, I'm not saying that it never happens to other teams, but I rarely see it happen to either of the New York teams for sure. I don't think I've ever seen a game where New York was involved where a bad call went against them. Most of the time, I see the bad calls going for them. So you can kind of say, well, I mean, that's just your bias. Okay, fine. I'll admit I'm probably a little biased on that. But you have to admit, they've gotten some very favorable calls this year. Whether it's through VAR or whether it's through just the referee, they've gotten some favorable calls. And it's frustrating because it feels like it's not changing. The referee organization is not doing anything about it. There's no, hey, let's pick up our game. There's no, hey, let's do some extra training. There's no, hey, let's talk about VAR and how it should be used. None of that is happening. All they're doing is just releasing statements, oh, VAR was used properly. But it wasn't. So, I don't know. It's very frustrating. It's something that is, in my opinion, really hurting the game in America. Because it gets frustrating to watch whenever you go to support your team and it feels like even when your team is playing poorly, it can still be enjoyable to watch. It can still be somewhat fun to watch. But then when the referees step in and they affect the game with their decisions, they're not supposed to be affecting the game. They're not supposed to have an impact on the game. Their job is to be there to officiate, to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. But instead, these referees want to be all like, oh no, this is my show, so penalty. And make it a huge show because they want everybody to notice them when it's not about them. It's not about the referees. They shouldn't be a factor in the game. They should be there to make sure the game runs smoothly. Make sure people don't get hurt. Make sure people aren't cheating. That's the role of the referee. But it's changed. And I feel like it happens all over the world, not just in America. But you really see it because of how much faster the game has gotten in the MLS. With these induction of better players and faster players, the referees can't keep up. And they're slow to make decisions. They don't see whenever players flop because these players are more clever than they have been in the past. And so they're, obviously that's a penalty when they weren't even touched. I mean, that type of thing is starting to really show because the quality of the players, quality of the referees is still here. So that's just my opinion as a fan of the sport, someone who wants to see the MLS get better. Obviously, I'm frustrated as an Atlanta United fan that these decisions are going against us, but that's just something that not even really to do about the game because I'd rather talk about our poor play than the referees in this case. But that is something that just needs to be addressed. And I mean, obviously, I can't really do much about it as somebody who just wants to complain on YouTube, but it is something that I do feel like needs to be talked about. It needs to be looked at. So, anyway, on to the individual performances, because I don't know. I don't really know how to describe this. The one thing that I will say from Tata's point of view is you do have to look at the fact that we're going into this game against a team we know have good quality players and a lot of speed up front too. Maybe not the best decision to go with Jeff and Michael both in the back because there's definitely a lack of pace there. So that is something that maybe we could have changed that would have helped us a little bit. But for a lot of them, it just wasn't good. Brad, not much I can fault him on. I feel like he still was his same old, aggressive, trying to make good plays. I mean, honestly, the save that was called a penalty at first was brilliant. So he was still good overall. It was just, as much as they kept peppering him in goal, you knew one eventually was going to go in, and eventually they get a penalty. And then, of course, he saves a penalty in the second half, too, so not much I can fault him on for that. In the defense, honestly, all three of them, Perez, Michael, and Jeff, all three of them just not really that good. They were all pretty slow with their passing, all kind of just disconnected, disjointed as well. It just didn't feel like it was a good, solid defensive performance, which is what I've seen whenever we're in this formation. It didn't feel like that. And a lot of it was because we kept giving away the ball. Most of the time, whenever we have so much possession, it's easy for this formation to be good defensively because we have possession in the final third, which means whenever they win the ball back in their defensive third, we have plenty of time to adjust. But in this game, because we kept giving away possession in the middle of the field, it just wasn't we weren't able to get out. We weren't able to adjust defensively. So we give it away, and then it's a lot of reactionary defending. So all three of them were just not really. I feel like they kind of piled it on themselves. You could look at the attacking people as well and say, well, not enough movement. But they definitely didn't help themselves with some of the giveaways that they had. Because I mean, they were just as compliant in giving away the ball sometimes. As far as the wingbacks are concerned, because there was so much pressure, they weren't able to get out as much. You know, Gressel, who's normally very good on the right wingback, he didn't have nearly as much time and space as he normally does because they had pushed so high up and were putting pressure on even him. So he was rendered ineffective. Chris, I've already talked about before, he's just not effective as a left wingback. He doesn't have the speed and stamina to be out on the left wing, so I feel like that was a mistake as well, leaving him out there. Obviously, I mean, you don't really have a whole lot of options, but there's got to be something better than Chris. You know, I'm not saying throw Bello back out there again and against the second team in the league, but we got to find another solution. You know, whether Hernandez is ready or not, I don't know, but we needed to find a solution for that because he's definitely not cutting it right now. In the middle, Eric and Darlington, both of them under a lot of pressure, and neither of them really turned up when we needed them to. Darlington looked a lot slower than he has been in the past. Don't know what that's about. Don't know if he's still hurting a little bit. Eric just felt like he kept giving away the ball, and defensively, neither of them really helped. And so, honestly, I think this was a game where if you have Jeff in the middle with either of them, and let the one with the more pace be the distributor, while Jeff is more of the bruiser, I think that's a better midfield pairing. And I've talked about this before, how you have three good midfielders that you can sort of mix and match depending on the game that you're up against. And in this case, we needed more defensive stability there. And honestly, neither of them, Darlington or Eric, are great defensively, where Jeff, he is. So I feel like this was definitely a game where we needed to mix Jeff with one of those two, preferably Darlington, just because he has a bit more speed, and there was a lot of speed in the midfield. But that's just a decision you have to make before the game starts, and unfortunately they didn't. So then as far as the front three are concerned, all three of them weren't really able to get involved that much. I will say they were able to carve out a few chances here and there. And definitely the one-on-one chance that Miguel missed, that's one you can look at and say, all right, you got to finish that one. But aside from that, most of my problem with them was not the finishing aspect. It was more the lack of movement. It just felt like they weren't really providing enough whenever we had the ball in the back. And so it was difficult for us to get out. It was difficult for us to find an outlet because there wasn't enough movement up there. It was too much stagnant. It just wasn't good overall. So I realize that's kind of a quick summation of everything, but honestly, it was a pretty simple problem. You know, just none of them were really doing the jobs that I've expected them to do. And so it hurt us, you know. It's very simple when it comes to this one. So, yeah, with all that being said, the subs that came on, you know, Barco, don't really expect him to do much because he's still young. He's still not strong enough in this league. And so you throw him on expecting him to just be the piece that you need. And he's not. You know, he's got a lot of energy, don't get me wrong, but that's more energy that you need whenever you are tied or you're kind of in the front foot. You're in the driver's seat. You're controlling the game. You bring him on with some energy, he's going to take it to the other team. He's going to really put pressure on him. You know, whether he's on the ball, whether he's putting pressure on the other team who has the ball. In this game, it wasn't like that at all. You're bringing him on the field when we are really on the back foot. They're constantly driving at us. We're hardly able to keep possession. He's not going to help you with that. He's not that type of player. So, and I can't remember. Oh yeah, Vasquez came on for Martinez. At that point, that was just kind of a desperation move. Like, oh, let's maybe put on a big body up top and hope he can keep some possession up there. He doesn't get enough playing time, you know. He's hardly played at all this year, and you expect to just throw him on and be like, all right, go do something, kid. That's not going to happen. Honestly, our better option would have been Romario sending the ball over the top and letting him run. But for some reason, we don't like to do that. I don't know why. Anyways, so with all that being said, hopefully it's just a blip. I've said this before, I've said this, what game was that? We lost like 3-0. DC, 3-1. I'm looking at that game, I hope it's just a blip. I hope it's just a slip up and the rest of the season will be good. Here's another slip up. And all it takes is just one more. You've got 3 games left. Red Bulls are now 1 point behind us. All it takes is one slip up, one draw against these final 3 teams, and all of a sudden, second place. Oh well, missed out on trophy. I hate that feeling. I hate the fact that we're still at that stage where one game, and it's just a mental shutdown. And all of a sudden, oh look, now it's just 1 point. It shouldn't be like that. We have enough good quality players on our team. We have a coach who should be good enough. This shouldn't happen. We shouldn't slip up like this. If anything, we should be leaving there with a point. But to slip up and just throw away the game like that, let them control it, let them dominate us like they did, we have good enough players. That should never happen. And by any team in this, we should never be dominated by any team in this league. And it feels like that's happened now 2 games in the past 6. That's not a good feeling. So we got to turn it up now. It's got to be, last 3 games have to be perfect. We have to come away with 3 points from all of them. Can't risk it. Can't risk slipping up and letting New York in. So hopefully the players are up for it. I hope. Fingers crossed. But anyway, so that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on this game? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe. Feature Atlanta United games. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.